Alright, so today we're going to be talking about weathering and erosion. The main standard that we're talking about this week is explaining the differences between physical weathering and erosion. Our lesson objective today is to identify and or describe the processes of physical weathering and or erosion. We have two essential questions that we need to answer throughout this lesson. What are the forces or physical agents that cause weathering and erosion? And what does weathering and erosion do to change Earth's surface or crust? Okay, so what causes Earth's surface to change? You can see in these photos that over time, the Earth's surface is changing due to various factors. Scientists have observed these changes and have found what causes Earth's surface to change. The first thing that causes Earth's surface to change is weathering. Weathering is the breaking down of rocks by gravity, wind, water, ice, growing plants, animals, and a change in temperature. Weathering is a physical or mechanical process that changes Earth's surface, and there are 5 main causes of weathering. The first cause of weathering is ice wedging. Ice wedging is the breaking down of rocks as a result of the repeated act of water trickling down between the cracks and freezing. So as you can see in the photo, the first photo, water got into a crack in the rock, and as we know, water, when it freezes, it expands. So when it expanded, that rock started to break. The ice in the rock takes up more space than water, and the ice makes the cracks in the rock deeper, and as it thaws, the rock expands and then it contracts. The next cause of weathering is flowing water. So flowing or moving water carries particles of rock, soil, and sand. As the particles scrape against larger rocks, the rocks over time become smaller and smaller. The force of the waves as they crash against the shorelines can cause bits and pieces of the rock to break apart. So as you see in this photo, we have flowing water and it is moving those little bits of rock. That's why the rock looks smooth in that picture on the right, because a lot of that flowing water has been breaking off pieces of the rock and carrying it with it through the water. The next cause of weathering is called root wedging. You may have seen in a parking lot some asphalt where there's a tree or a plant growing underneath it, and you can see where there are little cracks in the road. So that could be a result of root wedging. So as the plants grow, they work their way into cracks and crevices in rock. These cracks widen over time until the rock falls apart. So you can see in the photo that the root of the tree has actually cracked that rock right in half. The next cause of weathering is wind. So sand and sediment blown by the wind can scrape against the rocks and cause pieces to break off. And in this example, the rock has been weathered by wind, causing pieces to break off. Wind weathering also works to smooth the surface of the rocks, as seen in this example. So you can see this one kind of looks like a mushroom. This is called a mushroom rock because on the bottom, a bunch of pieces have been broken off of the rock, and then at the top, it's been really smoothed out by the wind. So whenever the wind is blowing and it may be in a sandy area, that sand is breaking down that rock because of the forceful wind, and it's kind of working to be abrasive on that rock and kind of break it or exfoliate it and rub it down and make it smooth. The next cause of weathering is extreme temperature. So when temperatures are hot during the day, the rock expands, just like water. Water, when it's warm, is going to be flowing, and it kind of expands. So, and that's the same with different molecules. And when it's cold, it starts to contract. So those molecules start to bind together and contract. Over time, the changes cause rock to break apart, and this is also known as thermal expansion. So if you look at that rock, you can see that it's gone through a bunch of different changes. It's an old weathered rock. So basically when it got warm, it kind of expanded, those molecules expand, and then over time when the expanding and the contracting takes its toll and it starts to crack. All right, so just to recap, there are 5 main causes of weathering. The first one that we talked about was ice wedging. The next was flowing water, root wedging, wind, and extreme temperature. So next we're going to talk about erosion. So erosion is a little different. Weathering is breaking things down. Erosion is moving things around. So the erosion is a process of moving weathered rock pieces from one place to another. The movement is happening through wind, water, gravity, and ice, and the process of erosion can happen at various speeds. So if you look at that picture on the right, you can see that that was once a road, because you can see the little white marking on the road. And you can see that that has been broken apart because pieces are falling down and are being moved by erosion. Right, so the causes of erosion. One way that things can erode or things can be moved around are flowing water. So flowing water can carry sediments downstream, and this is after weathering has already taken place. So weathering is happening off of those rocks, pieces are breaking, and then erosion takes them downstream through the flowing water. Also, ocean waves can erode the rocks and cliffs, affecting the coastline of beaches. The next cause of erosion is wind. So wind can carry different sediments from dried out bodies of water and throughout the Earth's surface. And wind erosion happens the most in the desert where there are fewer plants. And you can see that in both of these photos. The wind is really moving everything around. The sand is picking up and it's moving throughout the desert. All right, the next cause of erosion is ice. So here, there are these huge sheets of ice that are called glaciers, and as they are freezing, they scrape away the pebbles and the rocks, and then they freeze and then they melt. So when the glaciers are moving, they take all of that stuff with them. When most glaciers move slowly and they wear away rock and soil as gravity pulls them downhill. All right, the next cause of erosion is gravity. So we've talked about gravity before. Gravity is pulling everything down. So the force of gravity pulls sediment and rocks downward. And it can be a very slow process or a very fast process, like in a landslide. And in this photo, you can see that there was a landslide. There was a clear marking where that soil and sediment and all of that vegetation was just pulled down by gravity. All right, and to wrap up, so the difference between weathering and erosion, and this is the most important thing that we need to remember, is that they are different. Weathering is breaking down the rock, and erosion is carrying it away. And you can see on the left-hand side that those little pieces of rock are staying by the main piece because the weathering just breaks it apart, and the erosion actually takes it away. And in this photo, it's showing that water is taking it away and moving it towards the next body of water.